Okay, we are going to take notes on how to graph a polynomial. So we're going to start with which form is the most useful. So when we are graphing, we want it in factored form. The reason we want it in factored form is that it's very easy to find the x-intercepts. And once we have the x-intercepts of a graph, the rest of the curve kind of just follows along. So for number one here, we have the degree is something we need to find first. The reason is because it tells us kind of what shape the graph is going to have. So we're going to count up how many x's we have. So if we would multiply x times x times x, that would give us x to the third, which would give us a degree of 3. And then we know if we have an odd graph, the left-hand side and the right-hand side, so those end arrows, would point in opposite directions. Okay, then our next step is to find our x-intercepts. So our x-intercepts, we are going to set each of our factors equal to 0 and then solve. So we would have x equals 0, which would give us our first x-intercept. We would have x minus 4, which would give us 4. And then we would have x plus 5 equals 0, which would give us negative 5. Okay, then what we're going to do from there is we're going to add those to our graph, and we're just going to kind of estimate where they are, and then we're going to label. So we have negative 5, 0 happens on the origin, and then we have 4. And then we need to look at the orientation. So because there is no number or sign out front, this is going to have a positive orientation, which means the right-hand side is going to point up. So I like to start on the right-hand side, and we're going to draw our up arrow. And then since these are all single factors, there's no squared, there's no cubed, we are going to pass straight through the x-axis. So we have a polynomial that looks something like that. Okay, then for our next example here, we have some squared values, so we'll talk about what that means. So first, let's count up the degree. So we have 2 x's here, 1 x here, and then we would have 2 x's here as well. So we have 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 more gives us a degree of 5. Okay, which also tells us it has an odd orientation, or an odd degree, which means the left and the right sides are pointing in opposite directions. Okay, and then we are going to look at those x-intercepts. So our x-intercepts here would be 0, because x squared equals 0 gives us 0. X minus 6 equals 0 gives us an x-intercept of 6. And then x plus 5 squared equals 0 would give us negative 5. And then these are both special x-intercepts. They are actually double roots. So that happens when we have that squared value. And what that actually tells us is our graph is going to bounce there. So it will not cross through the x-axis at those points. It will hit the x-axis and bounce in the opposite direction. So we need to go ahead and label these. So we have 0, and we have negative 5, and we have 6. Okay, again, we look at our orientation. The orientation of this graph is positive because, again, there is no negative sign out front, so that means the right side is going to point up. Okay, 6 is a single root, so we are going to pass through. 0 is a double root, so we're going to bounce. And then negative 5 is a double root, so we're going to bounce again. All right, and then our last example here. So we have our degree up first. So we have 1, 2, and then this counts for 3. So this is, again, a degree of 5. Okay, our x-intercepts are going to be at 0 because x equals 0. X minus 2 equals 0 would give us an x-intercept of 2. And then x plus 7 would give us an x-intercept of -7. That -7 is a triple root. And then what that actually tells us is our triple root is going to, it kind of like curves through the x-axis. And then what I mean by that is it's going to make like a cubic shape. So it's going to do like that kind of shape through. This guy is going to have a negative orientation because of that negative sign out front. So let's write negative orientation off to the side. That tells us that that right side is going to point down. Okay, so if we go ahead and label our points here, we have 0, 2, and -7. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and draw our curve. So we know the right side points down, so we're going to start down here. We're going to pass through 2, pass through 0, and then our curve here is going to do like the little curve through -7. The only other thing I do want to make sure we add is we did not have an example with an even degree. So if we have an even degree, what that would tell us is the left and the right side would point in the same direction.